Hello, I'm Rosie Roselle, Editor-in-Chief of Calle Ocho News. Today, we're speaking with the Ambassador of the United States to Panama about the evolving relationship between Panama, the United States, and globally connected communities like ours in South Florida. From education and cultural exchange to infrastructure, trade, and regional cooperation, this conversation explores how diplomacy today is shaped not only by governments, but by people. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And happy birthday. I know you had a birthday recently.
Thank you. Let's get right into these questions, Ambassador. I know you have places to go, things to do. You've said diplomacy goes beyond government. How can everyday people, entrepreneurs, students, and creatives act as informal ambassadors between the U.S. and Panama?
I think you said it yourself there, right? I think everybody's an ambassador, right? I might be the formal ambassador representing President Trump and representing our country, but every American that comes here, the 90,000 Americans that live here in Panama and throughout, they're ambassadors, right? They're ambassadors to America, they're ambassadors to our culture, to our country, from our people, and the visitors, right? The nearly 20% of Americans that make up the majority of the visitors coming here to Panama, the largest bulk, again, those are ambassadors. So it's about those people-to-people connections. Governments come and go, but those connections in between people are the ones that ultimately stay, and in this case, have stayed since the beginning of Panama as a country. Over 120 years ago, we've had a relationship with the government of Panama.
Miami-Dade County is one of the most globally connected regions in the U.S. How does Panama view its relationship with communities like ours?
Well, Miami-Dade County, they call it the capital, to Latin America, the gateway to Latin America. Well, I will tell you, if there's a capital within Latin America, it would be Panama. Panama is essentially the Miami of Latin America. It's connected with Copa. Copa is similar to American Airlines, but here in Latin America, they have tons of flight, the largest airline in the region. Anywhere you want to go, they can go there. When you look at the canal, the amount of logistics that go into that, the amount of, whether it be a company that it's a shipping company or whether it be other company moving all sorts of cargo, a lot of the cargo doesn't necessarily stay here in Panama, but it goes from one container ship to another that might be going to different parts of the world, and they consolidate here in Panama. Again, the banking sector, similar to Miami, it has a huge banking sector, and it's local. It's kind of a local regional headquarters for Latin America. Well, once you're in Latin America, if your headquarters isn't in Miami, it's likely in Panama, because again, that connectivity, and it's a safe country. It's a relatively safe country for Latin American standards, and it's pretty. They use the dollar, which is it's a dollarized economy, which makes things a little bit easier. So again, if you're looking to do business and you're not in Miami, you're likely going to find yourself in Panama.
How can local leaders and institutions engage more intentionally?
I think one of the things they got to do is come down here, right? We've been doing a large part of our efforts is working with the folks in our embassy, in the commerce section, in different sections within our embassy to organize these missions, to organize these exchanges between not just Miami, not just Florida, but through different parts of the country. Panamanians have, strong relationships with the states like Texas. For example, a lot of Panamanians seek health care in Texas. You've got MD Anderson and other hospitals such as, where a lot of folks go. In addition to, there's a lot of commerce as well, right? After Florida, Texas is probably one of the states in which they have the most connections in terms of economy. So again, I would say it's about coming here, looking at the opportunities that exist. Panama, they've got over $10 billion, and that's just in the canal of upcoming infrastructure projects that you have companies in Miami and all over the United States that can participate in. And our embassy, the United States Embassy here in Panama, that's their tool, that's their voice, that's their resource. So for companies, for business leaders looking to do business here in Panama, that's what we're here for at the U.S. Embassy. Come and visit us, talk to us, and we'll help guide you. So you can have a welcoming experience.
When people talk about investing in Panama, they often focus on money. What does it mean to invest socially and culturally in the country?
What I'll tell you is that, a lot of people talk about the relationship between the United States and Panama, and they talk about different agreements we've signed, memorandums of understanding on security cooperation, that we've done a lot under this president. I'd say he's probably one of the better presidents they've had in a very long time. In terms of working with our government. And I'll tell you that these things, folks want to see what's the impact for us, right? On the United States side, it's a security aspect, right? Having a good partner here in a strategic hub, which is Panama, because of the canal, because of the banking sector, because of its geographic location, that's important to us. But what's in it for the Panamanians? Well, I'll tell you that from our perspective, this year over 10,000 Panamanians are going to get some sort of health care because of Southern Command. Because of the Southern Command and its humanitarian efforts, whether it be the USS Comfort, whether it be cataract surgeries being done by U.S. Army doctors. Again, there's a variety of things that we're doing here that we do with our partners, that we do with our friends, that we don't do elsewhere. So those are the benefits of working with the United States. Those are the benefits of having a good working relationship with us, and the benefits of the relationship between President Trump's administration and President Molino's administration, which have grown stronger, I would say, since I've been here in the last year or so.
Why do you feel that the cultural investment is just as important as the economic investment?
Well, I will tell you that, again, it's about people got, a lot of times when you talk to folks, there was a minister here that told me one day that people don't eat bullets, right? So us giving them bullets, us giving them boats, us giving them all sorts of military equipment to help beef up their security apparatus, which is helpful to us because you want a partner that's sustainable. You want a partner that's resilient. You want a partner that can do a lot of these things on their own, right? You don't want to have to necessarily do everything for your partner. And that's what we do with friends and partners like Panama, where we teach them, we help them with equipment and stuff like that. But the people, the population, they want to see what's in it for them, right? Mm-hmm. How is it that it helps them in these humanitarian efforts? That's what helps them. And again, for countries that partner with us, for countries that have security arrangements with us, there are benefits. And in this case, it's the humanitarian efforts as part of Southcom, which again, it's not just the healthcare side of it. It's 11, walking bridges that help cross canals for kids that are going to school, where you have kids that have died crossing a canal or crossing a creek, going to a school. And now we're going to be building those 11 bridges. Backpacks, water filters in over 40 schools throughout Panama. That's going to help over 10,000 students have potable water in school. You can't have education. You can't have health if you don't have a basic need like potable water. So again, those are some of the benefits that are in for the Panamanian people from having that relationship with the United States, from having that strong security cooperation with the United States. And what's in it for the United States? Well, in addition to being a good friend and a partner, it's that security side. In making sure that we have a partner that's going to help us on migration, a partner that's going to help us in shutting down criminal organizations. It's going to help us, shut down drug traffic. That's going to help us make sure that we have a safer, stronger, more prosperous hemisphere.
It's a better alliance in general, correct?
Absolutely.
Education has been a bridge between our regions. How does education factor into Panama's long-term diplomatic and economic strategy?
What I'll tell you is that thousands of Panamanians study in the United States, and even when you look at their government, when you look at the ministers, the majority of them went to college in the United States. President Molino went to Tulane. The foreign minister went to Texas A&M, and I could go on and on through their cabinet of folks that went to study in the United States. So again, they want to study in the United States. A lot of them go study there. A lot of folks who have the opportunity. So again, it's about creating, if somebody studies, it's soft power as well, right? If somebody studies in the United States, they are more likely to be pro-American, right? So it's about creating those opportunities. And when you ask people here, by over 2 to 1, they'd rather do business and they'd rather go to school in the United States. So one of the things we found is you have a lot of folks that study in the United States, but there's not a lot of campuses here, right? Whereas you had 5 Confucius centers, right, and the 5 public universities here, you didn't have a whole lot of American universities. So we're working with over 7 universities from the United States to open up as a campus here, right? You have FSU.
How exciting.
You have, it's very exciting. You have FSU, you have Georgia Tech, who already have a presence here. And it's about helping others create that presence as well. Again, from our perspective, it's even good prospecting, right? These folks do 2 years here and then 2 years in the United States. And they don't pay necessarily in-state tuition. So again, it's a good I would say it's a good ROI for American universities as well. And for the Panamanians, they want to study in the U.S., so I think it creates a good opportunity. So we're working with different partners here from the States to see if they can open up a presence here, and we can continue to expand that. And by the way, for these American universities and colleges, it's also a great opportunity for the rest of Latin America, right? You can make Panama a hub, thanks to COPA and the availability it has to have access all over Latin America. You can create an educational hub here in American University that feeds students from different parts of Latin America, and they come and study here in Panama, a country that's fairly safe. They use the dollar. It has great connectivity. So again, in terms of a business perspective for American colleges and universities, I'd say it's unparalleled.
What skills or fields do you see becoming most critical in the future?
Well, it all depends on the country and the different shortages you have. But I would say, obviously, the tech sector, right? The tech, the maritime sector, banking, those are the ones that really move and shake the economy here. But a lot of this AI stuff that's, even for me, I'm on the younger side, but AI still for me is quite new. I don't even have Bitcoin. I don't quite understand it. But nonetheless, all of these sectors are like new things that are coming about that I think are going to be really the economy of the future, the jobs of the future. And it's about making sure that you have that youth that's trained to have those jobs for the future.
And creating the opportunity for them.
Absolutely. And Panama, they're big on trying to, dive into the chips sphere and seeing if they can be a vehicle to either pack or create microchips. We know that now in the world that we're in of AI and all these sorts of things, it's very important. Again, data centers, all these things are very important and all things that they're prioritizing. They're trying to see what's their footing and their position in the world of doing these sorts of things. Again, they're a logistical hub. They've got great geography. They've been blessed probably with some of the best geography in the world, if not the best, which helps them in all these sorts of things.
Do you see Panama emerging as an academic or innovation hub for the Americas in the coming years?
I think so. And I think to my earlier point, right, a lot of these academics institutions, create a hub here. Right, they could create a situation in which you recruit students from all over Latin America and they come and they study here. They come and study here in Panama. Again, great connectivity, fairly safe. They use the dollar. And it's, again, Panama's a country that even when you look at it in terms of migration, the folks that were coming through the Darien and stuff like that, they weren't necessarily Panamanians. Panamanians don't really migrate. They have the highest GDP in the region. It's over 20,000 per capita. So again, I think it's a great opportunity for companies to come and invest here and to use Panama as a hub or even a stepping stone to doing business in the Americas and within the United States.
Speaking of the Darien Gap, the closure of the Darien Gap has drawn global attention. How does this moment reshape Panama's role in regional cooperation?
Well, I would say that the closing of the Darien Gap, and it is closed, it is absolutely closed. You had over 1 million people that crossed over the course of a few years through the Darien, and they weren't staying in Panama. They were making their way to the U.S. southern border, which is why when Secretary Rubio talked about creating choke points, he talked about in order to really deal with migration, you had to create these choke points throughout the Americas. Panama was essential. Panama connects South America to the rest of the Americas, right? So if you're coming from any country in South America and you're working your way to the U.S. southern border, you're going to go through the Darien. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just that. They had cartels. They had human traffickers. They had people that were smuggling drugs, smuggling arms. They were killing people. People were hung from trees. People were treated very badly. This was not a humane situation. It wasn't just migrants trying to seek a better life. No, it was people that were being abused. So thanks to President Trump and thanks to President Molino and their cooperation, the Darien is closed. Since January 20th of 2024, when President Trump was inaugurated, of 2025, when President Trump was inaugurated, the numbers are down 99%.
Can you give me an example of what that abuse would look like?
Well, the folks that were going through there, again, you might have been charged 1 and 2 times by these coyotes to take you across the Darien. You might have been raped. You might have been forced to smuggle drugs. You might have been forced to smuggle arms. You might have been forced to do all sorts of terrible things, and at the end they might still kill you, right? Because it really wasn't about helping people, it was about abusing people. And again, President Trump understands that, President Molino understands that, they understand that you can't have a country without borders. Previous governments were moving people from one end to another as they were making their way to the U.S. southern border, which is absolutely absurd. Our government, President Trump's government, said that's not acceptable. And since the day he was inaugurated, the numbers are down 99%. You went from over 5,000 people a day to less than a dozen a month.
Amazing.
That's a huge difference. And again, it's only made possible through this joint cooperation of both countries working together because, again, these migrants aren't good for us and they aren't good for Panama. They're creating havoc. From the moment they cross that Darien to the moment they get into the next country, they're creating havoc all throughout Panama. So again, that is one of the greatest accomplishments, I would say, of this first year and so on of President Trump's administration that went a long way towards making sure the U.S. southern border is shut down the way it is today. And it's only thanks to President Trump and his policies.
You've mentioned Southcom several times. What is Southcom?
So it's Southern Command. The United States military is split up into different commands around the world, and this area in which we're in is controlled by Southcom, which
Got
is
it.
essentially south of Mexico and the Caribbean. So all military operations, which are based in Miami, by the way, Southcom provides all sorts of great jobs in Miami. It's a few thousand, so it's a great employer in Miami-Dade County, and they handle all of the military operations that occur south of Mexico and the Caribbean.
What new opportunities does this create for collaboration between Panama, the United States, and neighboring countries?
What you would say what in terms of closing,
closing of the Darien Gap.
I would say, again, these things that were occurring, they're good for anybody. You know, having millions of people cross through your country unaccounted for, and potentially with drugs, potentially with arms, these aren't good things. Good things don't happen. You know, these aren't just innocent people trying to cross, you know, for a better life. These are people that were being used. These were people that were being trafficked. These were people that some were complicit, some not. But again, the good things were not happening. And you can't have a country without borders. And having that shut down, having law and order, that's what you need. You can't have a country without borders. And it helps every other country from here to the U.S. southern border. It helps Mexico. It helps Costa Rica. It helps the rest of Central America. Because that million people, they weren't just staying here, and they weren't just staying in their countries. They were working their way up and creating havoc all along the way.
Panama plays a critical role in regional air travel. How can U.S.-Panama cooperation improve aviation, safety, and efficiency across the region?
Well, I'll tell you that, again, because of COPA, it's a hub for COPA. They were just awarded a few days ago the most punctual airline in the world.
Wow.
The most punctual, airport in the world here in Panama, and over 90% of the flights here are from COPA. So again, COPA provides great connectivity, and clearly they also provide great punctuality, which is not usual in Latin culture. One of the things they said was that maybe the new Panamanian time was to be on time, was one of the things that they had said in the presentation. But again, air travel, you know, if you're going anywhere in Latin America and you're using COPA, you're coming through Panama. Over 20 million people last year came through Tocumen on their way in and out through anywhere throughout Latin America. So again, it creates great connectivity, not just for tourism, but for commerce, and if you're moving in and out of the United States as well.
I hope they're not running on Cuban time. Recent court decisions involving port operations have highlighted the importance of rule of law. What message does Panama's judiciary send to global partners and investors?
I think it's a country of rule of law, right? The decision you're talking about is the recent one about the ports, right? Panama's judiciary is an independent branch. They did their own judgment. They did their own analysis. They've ruled those port concessions to be invalid. And I think it's good for investors, right? Because you want to have predictability. You want to have the rule of law. You want to make sure that good deals are kept and bad deals are invalidated, right? If a deal is illegal, you want to make sure that there is some sense of rule of law that it will eventually be implemented. So again, I think it's great for an investor. I think if you're an investor, you want to invest in a country that has a strong judiciary system that's going to make sure it weeds out any sense of corruption, that it weeds out any sense of a deal that's fishy, that wasn't done properly. And I think that's what you have here, right? You had a bad operator that owed the Panamanian people over $600 million, that they didn't pay them, money that could have gone to school, roads, all sorts of things. And in addition to that, they had all sorts of violations within their contract. It was invalidated, and I think it's good for Panama, and it's good for the rule of law, and it's good for investors who should have more confidence today in investing in a country like Panama that has a strong judiciary system.
Yeah, legal certainty definitely affects long-term economic stability. Looking ahead, 5 years, what do you hope people in South Florida better understand about Panama that they may not fully see today?
Well, I hope they come and visit, right? I hope they come and visit and see that, you know, obviously Panama City is we're not talking about Panama City in Florida for spring break. We're Panama City here in the country of Panama is very similar to Miami. When you're standing there in their downtown and you look at the skyline, it almost looks like you're in Brickell. Mm-hmm. But what I would tell them is, you know, 5 years from now, hopefully they've grown more economic ties. Hopefully they figure out different ways to invest here, and they've figured out, Panamanians, different ways to invest in America. We're their largest foreign direct investor by far. No one even comes close. And we want to continue to grow that in terms of foreign direct investment, but we also want to find opportunities for them to invest in America, for them to invest their money in America and make our country better. And again, when it's better for us and it's better for them, it's better for both of us. And that economic growth is really what's going to drive both countries. It's going to continue to drive that relationship to the next level.
Is there any misconception out there that you'd like to correct?
Listen, I would say there's always misconceptions, and there's always haters, right? I think that's the best way to say it. There's always people out there that have their own political motives, that have their own agendas, right? We dealt with it here in terms of the memorandum of understanding that Secretary Hegseth signed. People tried to say all sorts of misconceptions and lies, and it was just politically opportunist people who had their own agenda, right? They didn't really care about what they were saying, nor what the truth was, but rather cared about their own ambitions. And quite frankly, there were a bunch of failed politicians that had run for president and lost. So it's a little sad. But again, and everywhere in life you have haters, you know, and if you don't have haters, that means you're probably not doing something right.
Isn't that the truth? Is there a real possibility in the future that Panamanian citizens could travel to the United States without a visa? And what would need to happen for that to become a reality?
So that's become a popular topic. When their foreign minister, we went to visit, we had a visit with Secretary Rubio. That was one of the asks that they had of America, if they would be able to join the visa waiver program, which I think only Chile right now is the only country in the Western Hemisphere, or in Latin America, that is part of the visa waiver program. The visa waiver program for us is a security apparatus. It's about you sharing security information with us. It's about us having eyes and ears and making sure that the folks that are boarding your planes are dealing with the same security scenario that they would in America. For others, it's a convenience, right? For Panamanians and for other countries, Chile, for example, it's a convenience. It's making sure that you can travel, you know, easily in and out of America. So it's about making sure that those two things align. And you know, what came out of that meeting is we created a working group. And part of when this program was created in U.S. statute, there are requirements in terms of sharing information, in terms of making different security adjustments at their airport, within different departments within their government. So what we set up was a working group, and everybody who has an equity in that list, in that list of different things that must be done to be eligible, is part of that working group, and making sure that they're making efforts and they're doing their homework to make sure that every day they could hopefully get to a situation where they're eligible. Today, I could tell you that they're not quite there yet, but there's nothing on that list that they can't accomplish. And for America, it's good because if you share all the information that you have to, if you beef up your security in your airports and in your ports in a way in which you're similar to America, that's good for us. Because when folks are traveling through your country or connecting through your country to come to our country, they're dealing with the same security mechanisms that we have in our country, which we feel are the best in the world. So again, for us, it's a security measure. For others, it's a convenience. And it could be a possibility, but we've got some work to do, and that's why we've set up that working group where everybody who has an equity has a little bit of homework on how we can get there.
So do you think it might happen in 1 year, 2 years?
It all depends, right? I would say the ball is in the Panamanians' court in terms of how quickly they can make the adjustments that they need to make.
Transparency builds credibility kind of thing?
100%, right? And it's about, again, none of these things are anything out of this world. It's about sharing intelligence, about passengers and different things. Some we can say here, some you can't. But again, it's nothing out of this world that they can't accomplish. It's just a matter of how quickly they can get there.
Now, to kind of wrap up our interview, I want to ask you a question on behalf of Grant Miller from Community Newspapers.
He's a dear friend.
Yes.
He's got more energy than anybody I've ever met in my life. The only guy that came close was the guy from the As Seen on TV, Billy Mays. Billy Mays and Grant Miller, they must have been connected somewhere along the way in their heritage.
So I'm going to ask you the question Grant Miller style, okay? Grant Miller here. Ambassador, what was your most favorite thing that you accomplished in the Miami-Dade County Commission?
In the Miami-Dade County Commission, this is going to sound boring, but I will say that a lot of the upgrades that we did at the airport that today you're seeing in fruition, right? Whether it be some of the upgrades in terms of the more escalators and elevators and moving walkways being repaired, these things take time, but we did pass all sorts of legislation to get there. And I will say one other thing that was pretty special was lowering the speed limit in residential areas to 25 in unincorporated Miami-Dade. Because again, it makes for a safer community, it makes for safer for kids to play outside, it makes for seniors, for people who are walking. I'm an avid walker myself, so I would say those two things are some of my two favorite things that we were able to do on the commission.
Well, we appreciate everything you did for us, Ambassador. Thank you for sharing these insights and for highlighting the importance of collaboration, transparency, and people-to-people connections between our regions. For our viewers in Miami-Dade County, across South Florida, conversations like this help bring global issues closer to home. To stay informed on stories that connect our community to the world, subscribe to Calle Ocho News and follow us across all our platforms. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.